are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today, the one, the only, Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'd be doing better if we had better hockey to talk about. I feel like I said that last week too, but we have a rough Flyers week to talk about here. Turns out the Washington Capitals are a very good hockey team. We learned that lesson this week, and as we kind of get into our discussion here, I want to remind you to follow us on Twitter at YWT Podcast. You can also follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. Follow the show on YouTube at YWT Podcast to get you right to us. You can find the show everywhere: Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, sportstalkphilly.com. And all right, I guess that's it. I'm mixing up whether I do it at the beginning or not. I figure we'll mix it up, keep things fresh. Things that weren't fresh. The Flyers starts this week. Would you say that was the biggest issue this week? Was just the first 10 minutes, basically, and what kind of stemmed out of that?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not the first 10 minutes because stuff that happens in the first 10 minutes is happening all game.
Okay.
I mean, it's real. It's just, I'm not even saying it's hard to get a read on this team. It's not hard to get a read on them right now. It's hard to understand why what is a problem is still a problem halfway through your season.
Right.
I mean, this team's a turnover machine. It's a flat-out turnover machine.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's look, I'm not going to tell you, and I watch a lot of hockey games, and you know this. I'm not trying to sit here and profess to be, if everybody else wants to sit there and say you know a lot about the league, you are smart when it comes to talking about the game.
Listen, I will say it for you what you're too humble to say. You are very knowledgeable about the NHL.
Okay, that's fine.
And you prove it on your other podcast, by the way, which people should follow.
Yeah, Open Ice Hits. With Hunter Brody.
Yeah.
Who that's part of the reason why the Sunday morning with the time change is not just a slow one because of the time change. I was literally still, in addition to talking about what we're going to try to talk about on our new episode for that show, Broads and I were talking for probably about at least an hour last night. Once I got home after the game was over, what's the deal?
What's the problem?
Right.
Because there's definitely a problem with this Philadelphia Flyers team, that's for sure.
And I tried to cover as much of it as I could in the takeaways. It's becoming more and more difficult. But here's the thing that I find that's actually consistent when it comes to this team and the way that I have to, or not have to, but the way I watch a game. And this is where I'm coming from when I say I don't profess to be ridiculously smart when it comes to that aspect of it. I can pinpoint and go back and watch the highlight of just the goal against and find the error every single time. That's how obvious it is to a commoner.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
if you can look at it and tape it and trace it just watching
and some of it's just flat out stupid.
Yeah, there's just obvious mistakes. We've seen so many turnovers at the offensive blue line, the defensive blue line, everywhere.
Do we want to just start with Saturday specifically because that's the most recent one?
Sure, that's the fresh wound. Yeah.
Okay. Forget the fact that he scored a goal. What's Nolan Patrick doing half the time?
Neutral
zone turnover leads to a goal, and it's a bad rebound by Brian Elliott, who was playing in his third game of the week or fourth game of the week because I believe what was it? No, he didn't start the Washington game. He had started the second Pittsburgh game though.
Right.
Like the first game of that weekend. So what you're going back to is that Brian Elliott had played basically, or actually, I'm sorry, because it only feels this way. He played the entirety of the 4-3 comeback win in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Because, believe me, the way that game started, it felt like a goalie change happened. It did.
Yeah.
But they end up winning that game. Then he plays the loss on Saturday in Pittsburgh, and he's not quite, it wasn't necessarily his fault, but he wasn't the sharpest either.
Certainly.
Then they play Washington and play Carter Hart, and he loses. But it's 3-1. They didn't have the legs. It wasn't necessarily,
It's not all on him, for sure.
Then came the Buffalo game. And again, and if I just look strictly at the schedule, you sit there and you look at the result, and there's a W there, and you go, okay, they did what they had to do. But the process was so awful. And And believe me, it's a topic that we're going to probably talk about later because it's the topic because it has to do with your goaltender. You know, Carter Hart was in there and he gets pulled, and it's not just, and that's not really the story because, you know, I'm not sitting here telling you Carter Hart was sharp in that game. He was far from it.
He was not.
But he's got the whole team has no support. Period.
Right.
And that game he gets pulled. So now Brian Elliott's come in and played again, and he's played. What was it? He played from second period on. So now and that's a weird one because that's not just playing second period on and saying, all right, he played the last 40. No, he played 45 because it went to overtime and then had to win a shootout.
Yep.
So
and he
not
did.
the easiest of work. Then he plays Wednesday or Thursday. Then he plays Saturday. So Brian Elliott played basically 3 games in a row, 4 of your last 5, and 5 of your last 6. That's getting to the territory of overuse with him at this stage of his career. So he was awful. And the first goal was the definition of what happens when he gets played as often as he does. Right?
But you know what? I do have to say, yes, I agree that Brian Elliott has been a little overused. I do agree that he's given up some soft goals that look like signs of kind of fatigue from him. I don't think Alain Vigneault has made a poor decision in net at all for any individual game because Carter Hart has no confidence right now. You said it in the group text. He has none, and it doesn't look like he's getting it back anytime soon. He hasn't looked good.
And that's to be expected, though. I mean, that's the thing. If you spent the entire year as an organization looking at the playoffs last year and going, that's the one thing that you can hang your hat on is the young goaltender looks outstanding in the playoffs, and that's what's going to get you so far. This is kind of what you were faced with to an extent because he's not 26-year-old Jordan Binnington who has been around the block in the minors so long that he knows how to deal with adversity at that level.
Right. Carter Hart played half a season with the Phantoms.
Carter Hart played 2 months of an AHL season and then was up in the NHL and started having success. And it doesn't mean he's not going to be good, great, elite down the line. All things possible. It's just he's 22. Go and look at what Carey Price was doing at 22. Go and look at what, and I can't say at 22, but go and look at how old Henrik Lundqvist was when it finally kicked in, or when, as Alain Vigneault talked about, Roberto Luongo. Yep. These are Hall of Fame goaltenders. Each one of them, all 3 of them that we just mentioned, right? Carey Price is going to be, Lundqvist is going to be. And
even if you talk about a guy like Robin Lehner, how old was he when it finally clicked for him and he started putting up Vezina numbers?
Do you want to know what I saw earlier this week? I actually mentioned it on. I think I mentioned it on Open Ice. Or no, I didn't. I mentioned it on my spot on the radio on 97.3 the other day. I saw something on Twitter. Dominik Hasek was 29 years old when he became a starter for Buffalo. Yep. 29.
Yeah. It's amazing. And
I get it. Like Hasek had a international play that made him come over to the league late. But you're 29. His prime years were 29 to 36.
Yep. Yeah. There is a segment of the fan base who has given up on Carter Hart.
And that's 1,000% wrong.
That fan base, or that portion of the fan base, I think you're forgetting how weird goalies are and the fact that goalies don't even generally get their first crack at an AHL everyday starting job until they're 23 or 24 mostly. And this guy is at 22 years old already into his sophomore slump. And if that's what this is for Carter Hart, there's a real good chance that the kid who we've thought was the prodigy and the messiah all along, and I know I'm being a little over the top here, but he has been claimed as the next one in net. He's got time, guys. He's 22.
Well, did you see the
it's
thread?
fine.
Did you see the thread that I ended up sharing it from Bill Meltzer because Bill Meltzer helped write a book on Pelle Lindbergh. And part of the book, obviously, is going to who Pelle Lindbergh looked up to his entire life and was mentored by and all that, Bernie Perrant. Now, you can't get a better mentor than that, by the way.
Certainly not.
Right?
No.
He explained, Bernie explains in the book that during this, one of his, it might have been, it was like his second year pro or something like that, or one of them, and he was struggling really bad. And the thing is that when you let the negative thoughts get in, your head's not right.
Yeah.
And the mentality shifts and everything feels like it's going wrong and you have to get over that and you have to work through it and things like that. But it's hard when it's in your head like that and you start to overthink everything and your confidence is low and all of that. Now, you've got to look at that path to an extent that Pelle Lindbergh was on a path to be eventually being the best goaltender in the league because he won the Vezina, but it didn't come without having a season of struggles. You know, he went from strong rookie to struggling to back to the, the best in the league.
Well, and also we have heard on multiple occasions Carter Hart be very open about the mental aspects of playing goalie and working with a sports psychologist. And Carter Hart knows the mental aspects of playing goalie as well as any 22-year-old goalie on the planet. I expect him to get his head out of the clouds and back to where they need to be. And if anyone can figure it out, it's Carter Hart. And he's working with people who know him better than anybody.
Right. Well, and that's been my argument all along with the whole team, though. What Nolan Patrick's doing, for example, I mentioned the turnovers, right? That's fixable. You can fix making a turnover.
You would think.
It's not like we're sitting there saying, "Oh my goodness, they do this wrong because they aren't in the right spot or whatever." I'm not sitting there saying their positioning's perfect, but it's not like there's no way they're always in the wrong spot. There's no way. It's not possible to be in the wrong spot the entire game when there's open ice around you, right?
Right.
If the bottom line is that if you make a pass from behind your net to try to break out of the zone and it's in the skates of the player you're passing to, that is all execution. And there's nothing else beyond that. That's execution, and that's fixable. But you've also there comes a certain point, and I mentioned the Nolan Patrick stuff. Nick Aube-Kubel didn't even jump over the boards for 19 seconds last night.
Okay.
Didn't even come on the ice for a shift. And I'm like, I'm not saying this is what frustrates me. Here's the thing. Not only was he demoted for the rest of the game to the fourth line after that, but I don't care what your team looks like right now. I don't care who you have to put in the lineup. I'm benching him next game.
Yeah, for sure.
He's out. I'm sorry. You don't play. You cannot be that mentally unprepared.
Mentally checked out.
At any point. You can't check out like that.
Right.
You absolutely can't.
Yep.
And that is and that's kind of like you almost don't know who to blame for that. Like half of that to an extent is coaching, because coaches need to make sure the players are ready,
and they have to be checked in too.
That's on the player himself.
Yeah,
you can't check out, and you're not only that, but especially if you're in his shoes. Okay, let's just have a hypothetical, not like it would actually happen in a game, but let's say it was Sean Couturier that had that mental checkout,
lapse.
Right? You're not going to bench him for a game, but you're going to, but you honestly might sit him down.
You might skip him a couple of shifts.
Right.
Yeah.
You might sit him down for a shift or two. But what I'm saying is that why is that? Because Sean Couturier is an alternate captain of this team. Sean Couturier is still your best player, and he's been
a leader.
The last few games. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, like I'm not saying, I know the team looks bad right now. Sean Couturier is the best player on this team.
Sean Couturier is the best player on this team.
He's been the most consistent, and he's been the bright spot out of just about every game this week, because he's made something happen in every single game. They've lost, essentially, it looks like it feels like they've lost the last four, correct?
Yeah, when we sat down and talked, I said, yeah, and something, talking about 3 losses, and you went, wow, I really thought it was 4, because it was just such a dismal week.
Right.
And even the Buffalo win didn't really feel particularly all that earned. So it felt like a 4-loss week for sure.
But here's the thing. So Sean Couturier has points in every single game this week.
It doesn't even feel like it. And it's just very quietly.
But it's quietly, but he's a very smart player, obviously, and we knew that. But he's getting what we marveled at Kevin Hayes for the ability to protect the puck and set guys up and keep possession.
Yeah, I do want to talk about Kevin Hayes after we get done talking about Sean Couturier.
Sean Couturier is playing that way right now.
So he is.
That's what's really impressive. And but I'm saying, you know what to expect from him. You know he's one of your best, and you know he's giving it so often that, like, let's just say, quite frankly, it probably wouldn't happen. But I'm saying, if the guy has a mental lapse like that, he's established.
Right.
Nick Aube-Kubel is not an established player on this roster, technically.
No, he's a borderline.
You still have to play
he's a borderline
like you're fighting
guy
for your life.
He's been healthy scratched.
Right, but you have to play like you're fighting for your life every single game. You have to play like your replacement is standing right behind you.
You have to play like Scott Laughton plays every single hockey game.
Yeah, kind of. That's a good one.
And I think there are a number of people in the bottom 6 who should play more like Scott Laughton. And that's what made Scott Laughton so effective in the bottom 6, and that's why he ended up getting a chance on the second line during the bubble in the playoffs last year.
But doesn't this make so much sense? No, doesn't this make so much sense? Scott Laughton played with such an urgency as a center that eventually they go, let's try you at wing and move you up, and it still worked, right?
Yep.
Nick Aube-Kubel was playing on the third line last year, 3rd/4th, but third at times, because he was a good energy player. He was pushing the play. He was driving the play with the forecheck. He was doing all those little things really well. And at different points in time, depending on who it was, because they've obviously had to shuffle, like last year they had to shuffle with absences because there was no Nolan Patrick, and after a while, no Oscar Lindblom.
Right.
They had a guy whose name was Tyler Pitlick who would drive the play.
He sure did. And I was a big fan of Tyler Pitlick.
And I really, truly thought they weren't going to miss a guy like that because I thought, no, you know what? It was a team mentality. One player doesn't make that, whatever.
Right. Tyler Pitlick's not that much better than, say, Michael Raffle. Right. They're a similar skill level. Right.
You are so missing out on opportunities because you're not and it's not just because you're not driving the play. Let's just say, everybody, I know that the freak out here is going. There's two things that people are going to freak out with after losing 3 out of 4 this week, all to Washington, 5 of your last 7, and all to teams in front of you in the division. I know there's a thing that people are going to freak out about, and I'm going to tell you it's not the reason why they're struggling. And people are going to point right to the guy who wears the C on his chest and go, it's a leadership issue. It's the same captain, same results, blah, blah, blah. Shut up, people. No, and listen, here's why. Claude Giroux is actually probably one of the top 2 or 3 players on the team right now in terms of the way he plays on a night-in, night-out basis, and he was centering the third line last night.
I agree. Claude Giroux dominates games.
Now, what does that tell you about either A, the rest of the group that's playing higher up? And I'm not saying, look, at the end of the day, I'm sitting there looking, I'm going, it's hard to break up that first line because they give you a lot right now. Couturier, JVR, and Farabee.
Right.
Break it up because you're not distributing enough. We're seeing the struggle to get anything going. In every single game they played this week, and I'm going to go just double check really quick because I want to make sure that I'm right about this before I say something. Okay, so Sunday's game, Joel Farabee scored the opening goal.
Yep.
Now look at that. Tuesday's game, James Van Riemsdyk scored the opening goal.
Yep.
How about Thursday's game? Travis Konechny on a power play. But then, oh look, third period, you're trying to come back. Here's Ivan Provorov from Sean Couturier. That was a 4-on-4, so that was a little different. So they were scoring in different situations. And then, oh yeah, Saturday, who scored the opening goal? James Van Riemsdyk. So which line is getting you going every single night when it comes to trying to start finally playing?
The line that has your 3 best players this year. Because
Correct.
On the forward core, I would say, you talked about Claude Giroux being one of your best forwards, and I agree. He's been very good. I'm not taking that away from him at all. You mentioned that Sean Couturier has been your best forward. James Van Riemsdyk has very likely been your second.
I was going to say Farabee, but okay, yes.
Really? Because I was going to say JVR second, and then Farabee and Giroux kind of tossing up for third.
I will give you one thing, and it's that JVR is not as noticeable on the defensive end, and I say that meaning,
of course,
no, because I say that meaning not noticeable is a good thing.
Right, he's not a problem.
I've been able to pinpoint Joel Farabee missing an assignment defensively, and
I was going to mention,
and look, chalk that up to being a younger guy.
Yeah.
Understood. He's playing top line minutes right now, which means playing the best players in the league. That might be it. And look, as much as I like how far he's come, how much he's scoring, and how much his smarts are showing in the game.
Yeah.
Maybe he's the guy you take off the line.
Maybe
because JVR's not killing you defensively. He's kind of not helping or hurting. You know.
Well,
what I mean?
I did actually want to mention with JVR real quick that we talked about turnovers earlier, and JVR in previous years has been pretty guilty of that Jake Voracek turnover at the blue line, and he's been much better with that this year. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I certainly am seeing it much less because he's just been a better player.
Name a player who has not had a turnover at some point. You know?
Oh, sure, of course. But I mean,
he
was chronically guilty of it for a while. He was one of the bigger offenders, and I did want to give him a little credit that he's tightened that up.
The point you're making is that at a different point, at certain points last year, this is either a fourth liner or a healthy scratch, and now he's a top line left winger.
And there's no question about it. And there's talk about him again, where he's in the conversation for your best forward on the team.
Right. I still stand by my statement. It's Sean Couturier, and Sean Couturier is the best player on this team, period. Because
I agree.
Because if you're not getting the goaltending, which you're not, so Carter Hart's not there yet. You can't say it. And
Brian Elliott's just not. He's doing his best. Brian Elliott's playing fine.
But it's clear the impact that Matt Niskanen's absence is having on Ivan Provorov specifically.
Yes.
I cannot look at Matt Niskanen as an excuse for 5 other guys on the team who didn't play with him last year.
Right.
I'm sorry. At the end of the day, it's either you don't get what's going on, you don't know how to play your position the right way in this system, or how to not make that mistake with the bad pass, or you were never good enough and you kind of just glided through that season getting but more lucky than good, But honestly, there's part of me that's completely at a loss with this because I did not think that this is the type of conversations we'd be having this season. Not even in the sense that, look, struggles happen. And I told you this before we hit record. One of the things about it is that, look, the optimist is going to tell you it's been 7 games. And in the grand scheme of things in a normal season, 7 games. I mean, let's do it this way. This happened when they went to the West Coast in December and January a year ago.
Right.
They were, they had a rough stretch. What'd they do? Go 1-5-1 in 7 games?
It was rough.
They won 1 game on a 6-game West Coast trip. One of them.
That was the trip that Oscar left the team on, correct?
No, that was later.
Oh no, that was later. Right.
So they got the Oscar news and they went 0-3 on a 0-3
Right.
on a road trip that included 2 games, or technically 2 games in the Denver,
Right, it was Colorado, right?
Well, they went to Colorado. Who else? They did Colorado, Minnesota, Winnipeg.
Okay,
that's what it was. So
you did Colorado, and you did the Rockies,
right? To an extent.
Yeah.
And then you went on the road again a few weeks later after the Christmas break. And,
right. And that was the god awful trip.
And lost to everybody but Anaheim, who was not very good.
No. But you lost to some teams that also weren't very good.
And capped it off with an overtime loss to Carolina.
Yep. Yeah, I remember
that's
that.
where you were going in. And then all of a sudden from there, the switch flipped. You beat Washington when you probably didn't have any right to. And then you went through the rest of your year slowly building it up more and more and more until you were knocking on the door of the division lead. That's how good you got that quickly. And you were doing it like
teams were talking, or the league was talking that if the season had continued last year, the Flyers might have won the division.
Correct. And then going into the playoffs, and who knows what happens because it's a different structure. They would not have been the same structure.
No, they would have played the second wild card team or the first wild card team.
Because there's no way to know.
They probably would have played the first wild card team, which might have been Toronto.
It could have been.
Man, that would have been a fun series. Whew. Yeah. Also, side note on Toronto, I'm certainly glad we don't have to play this year's version of Austin Matthews because, oh man, that boy is scary.
See, I'm not glad they don't have to play that. I know I just used the double negative there, but no. Here's the reason. This is part of the reason why it's hard to evaluate the team. You played 3 games against the same team this week.
You're playing in a vacuum.
No, do you think that they didn't figure out what was working the first night wasn't going to work the third or the fourth night? You know what I mean?
We talked about looking at it like a mini playoff series, and we talked about it with Pittsburgh, and we talked to a similar extent with Washington this week. I know we had that Buffalo game in there, but still, you play the same team 3 times in a week. Sorry, and by the third game, there's that familiarity and. There's a stat on the broadcast that I wanted to mention where they talked about Washington being the oldest team in the league, average age of 30 plus, and you got Zdeno Chara, and you got Washington is a big, physical, experienced team, and over 3 games they beat you down, and it wasn't just that they beat you; they leaned on you, they wore you down, they tired you out, and. I don't want to play Washington in a playoff series after what we saw out of them this week.
Well, I mean, things are back to normal for them in a sense too, and I know that it's a not normal world, but you know what I mean.
Zdeno Chara on that team is just unfair. That's just scary. Why are we doing that?
Because he went. You know what? I'll tell you why it's happening that way. Because he went to a team that's actually going to have a shot, and he knows it, and he's right. And think about what they've overcome. To an extent, because I know it's weird to say it that way, but they really have overcome a lot. Because let's put it this way: go down the checklist of what Washington's had to put up with this year. They signed Henrik Lundqvist to be the backup to Ilya Samsonov, thinking, okay, we're going to get this really good veteran guy in here, and he doesn't get to play a game because
give Hank a chance at a cup. Like they were doing a good thing for Hank. I think.
No, granted. He's already back. He's skated on occasion, not in full gear, but he's skated. No, but they're not ruling out the possibility he could actually return this year.
Well, and the nice thing is the Capitals will do whatever they need to do to get his name on the cup if they get there.
Sure, I get that part of it.
Just looking way down the future for that.
No, so that's the first part. Then they have a situation where 4 guys have to go on the COVID list because they were supposedly all hanging around each other in
they breached
a hotel
protocol
room or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just any 4 guys. It's Alex Ovechkin,
it's the big 4.
Evgeny Kuznetsov, Dmitry Orlov, and Samsonov. So your starting goaltender is going on the list,
Right.
and then didn't come off right away. Your all-time, like one of the all-time great goal scorers is on the list and goes on for 4 games. One of your top 3 defensemen goes on the list for 3-4 games, and Kuznetsov was out for the better part of 2 weeks as well.
Yep.
Right. And and what happened?
And the NHL didn't shut them down. That's the big difference.
That's not where I'm going. And what happened? They played those games without those 4 and went 3-0-1.
Yep.
And then Tom Wilson got suspended again. And it took out what people think is the physical element to their team. Oh, the physicality's gone. Oh, the tough guy's gone. Whatever.
Oh, Zdeno Chara more than made up for it this week.
So did Garnet Hathaway, by the way.
And so did Garnet Hathaway.
All right, let's get frustrated about something else here, right?
Hey, can we not get a penalty call when he assaults? Who is it? Sean Couturier?
He went after multiple players this week. At one point in time, I mean, it happened multiple times. Let's this way. There was against Buffalo. There was the Curtis Lazar flipping Scott Laughton.
Yeah, that was
trip with the stick.
Frustrating.
Dangerous play, and I don't remember anybody going after that guy.
And also no penalty call on the play.
And then you had, and then there was an elbow to the head of Couturier at one point in time. I forget if it was Hathaway or somebody else, but elbow to the head of Couturier. And oh, by the way, your captain got ragdolled around the ice last night by Garnet Hathaway, who has been a pain in your rear end the whole time. I should have just...
Kevin, you can say he's a pain in the ass. It's okay.
You know what I mean.
It's okay. We're a PG-13-ish show. We can say ass.
What I'm saying. And
he's a pain in the neck.
I watched it. No, but I watched as 5 seconds it was going on.
I know. It was bad.
And nobody moved. Nobody did anything. And you were losing a game.
All we had this week was Andy Andrioff and Garnet Hathaway in a pretty decent fight. Andy Andrioff landed some shots.
But what does it say that that's the guy who has to come in who's on the taxi squad half the
right.
year?
Well, that's the thing. If Andy Andrioff is in your lineup and he's like a Matt Martin type, okay, and he fights, cool. That's sure. But the fact that you had to dress somebody to answer the bell...
Well, quite frankly, I'd have to go back and I'd have to look up how many fighting majors Andy Andrioff has. I'm not saying he's never done it before in his career, but I'd be willing to lay a wager it's not as many as people want to think.
I think Andy Andrioff is accepting his veteran role, shall we say, and getting ice time however he can. And I'm not blaming him at all, for sure. But I think that's kind of where he's at in his career, where he kind of accepts that that's probably going to be his only role on a team that's above 500. Is that fair to say? He's not a particularly impactful hockey player in terms of production.
But it's just it blows my mind how soft this team is. And before people go, oh, then just get a tough guy. That's not what I'm talking about when I say they're soft.
No, this team wants Wayne Simmons back.
No, but they're soft because of the fact that look at the difference between last year and this year. Last year, you would go into the corners or go into board battles or whatever it is. And the thing that Washington did so well this week is one guy's engaged in the battle, and the second guy is right there so that when it does come loose, you get possession.
You're there to dig it out.
There's no support with the Flyers. None. They have one guy go in and do the dirty work, and 2 guys watch while eventually it becomes a lost battle. That's the first part. The second part is net front presence. The Flyers don't crash the net enough, and let's just say there might as well be an open 24-hour sign in front of the Flyers net because they don't clear the front of the net.
And if you're not in the corners and you're not in the slot, what are you doing?
But it is so easy to get that positioning, so easy to get there, and so easy to just plant yourself there and not be moved. Yeah. That's another part of the problem. This is not about they don't hit people or they don't fight people. This is about you don't make it difficult to play against at all. And I said it after Thursday's game, and I said it again after Saturday's game. It's a beatable team. They are very beatable because they do not play tough. They don't play that tough game that makes it difficult to beat them. And as long as you're not playing tough, you're not going to make the playoffs.
If the Flyers have any shot in the world of being a contender this year, in whatever definition of contender you would like to use, do they need Matthias Ekholm?
It wouldn't hurt.
Can this current roster do it? Because I don't particularly see it, specifically on the back end, because when I look at the back end, I don't see anyone that I want clogging up the slot. I don't see anyone that I want taking up space in the defensive zone, right? Ivan Provorov is a good defender. All these guys are good defensive. They're all mobile. They're all active. There is no take up space in the defensive zone defenseman. The closest you get is Robert Hagg, and he just doesn't quite have the skill level. Do they need a guy like Ekholm to just eat up minutes in that slot?
And that's why I say it would help. It would help. And here's the thing. You can go ahead and make that move. Let's just say you do, right?
And we did hear whispers of it over the last couple of days. Just full disclosure, we've heard whispers, and they are nothing more than that.
Right. Well, I wouldn't say they're whispers.
They are not much more than that. They are nothing substantial more than that.
In terms of a substantial actual deal, yes, they're whispers. But the talk of something happening is much more than a whisper now than it was.
There is quite a lot of smoke.
Yeah.
And where there's smoke, there tends to be a little fire.
Yeah, we're not talking about what is it? I guess it would be the gas fireplaces that are up in the assembly room that are where I'm at now.
Okay.
No, I'm saying just saying there's fire up there, so I can sit there and say, oh yeah, by the way, there's fire over there.
Well, we're talking about conversations between Chuck Fletcher.
The mood here.
Yeah, we're talking about conversations between Chuck Fletcher and the Nashville Predators, and that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Look, here's what I will say about this. There's always the possibility that doing something, wakes up the rest of the team that's here, and kind of, especially like let's put it this way. There's one thing I can tell you clear cut with 1,000% confidence and know it to be true. They can't get Matthias Ekholm without moving somebody on the roster, on the active roster. Financially, they can't do it.
Is that true? I believe Cap Friendly is projecting the Flyers to have $5.1 million of cap space on draft day.
If they do,
or on
then
trade
that's news
day.
to me based on what they're unless that's what they're based on what they're saving from all of those
the injury
moves
and
I didn't think about it like that, but
because if you're
right
looking
now it
at
says their projected cap space or their deadline cap space, their current cap space is 1.7 mil basically, if I'm rounding, and their deadline cap space will be 3.6.
3.6 million. Okay, so doesn't Matthias Ekholm make right around that?
I'll check, but
I think he's right in that. I'm actually on Cap Friendly already.
He makes 3.75.
So you got to clear. You got to clear 100K, and you can clear 100K pretty easily in the NHL.
But you're still not going to get him without giving up somebody on the current roster.
For sure, and I agree that that's probably the case. But you could theoretically offer something like a Cam York type piece, and I'm not saying he's the piece, but he's a name that I'm sure will be brought up.
That would be a massive mistake.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I'm just saying
because
you could theoretically do it.
Well, because now you're walking another fine line, because we can sit here and talk about draft picks and future and all that stuff, and believe me, I understand why people out there are shying away from this, wait and see on the kid. Like, there are people who are already done with Morgan Frost to an extent because they're going, you can't bank on potential of a guy who barely plays at this level.
He's just not getting the ice time. You're banking on a guy's
potential and saying it'll get better when he gets here. And what if that turns out to not be true?
Right.
When we've said it about everybody else, right? There was look. It's funny because it's true, but someone put out a tweet the other day. I forget where I saw it. Where it was the story of Phil Myers, 2018 was how did this guy go undrafted in 2021? It's you know what I mean?
Sure.
And that doesn't mean I don't think Phil Myers can be a better player than what he is or has
shown
a tough
better.
Week. It's just collectively it's bad, right? And
well, the easy money if you're trading for Ekholm, by the way, is you just move Gustafsson, right? Because he's just been poor. Nashville can flip him at half price if they want to try to recoup some assets. There's your easy money on the back.
I don't think a team is taking Eric Gustafsson right now, because if he can't even crack this lineup, which he should be, by the way.
But here's the thing: he's signed until the end of the year, and he makes a cap number that looks good in terms of getting Ekholm back.
And I get what you're saying in that regard, because that's the
Nashville doesn't want him.
But what you're saying when it comes to say Nashville, and I'm not saying that you'll ever make this deal 1-for-1. It won't be 1-for-1. But
no.
I get what you're saying, because what you're saying is that if the Flyers get Ekholm and Nashville gets Gustafsson, what Nashville gets is exactly what happened when it was essentially. is exactly what happened when it was Wayne Simmons for Ryan Hartman. Here's
Sure.
a guy who's replaceable in Ryan Hartman to their roster. Didn't make that big of a difference for a guy like Simmons, who, worst case scenario, is a half a year to contract.
Right, exactly. And then if Nashville decides that they're out of the playoff race because they're bad, they can flip them. If they want to retain half, all of a sudden, Gustafson's number doesn't look quite so bad if he's making 1.5 on the cap as opposed to 3, right? If Nashville retains half a salary. I'm just saying he's the money that goes. So if it's something like Gustafson and then, asset 1, asset 2, whatever your pieces are that are moving, something like Wyatt Wiley and a second round pick or whatever your trade ends up being. I'm not throwing anything, super specific out there. But if that's the trade, you would think, and I know you would think, that the team would just get significantly better literally instantly, right? The second Matthias Ekholm steps onto the ice.
One player isn't changing this team, though. This is a...
I don't know, man. You're talking about a legitimate top 4 defenseman. Probably a legitimate top 2 defenseman.
It's still not going to change it. Because what it doesn't change is, again, it's the Matt Niskanen argument. Matt Niskanen could be playing this year, and there's 2 things that could happen, honestly. One, okay, he could be making Provorov better, but he's not making the other 4 better because he's not on the ice with them.
Well, sure, but if you're more confident in that pairing, you're willing to give them more ice time, and then your other pairings just get less ice time.
I also think that Provorov is being overused this year, and I'm not saying I'm not saying that in terms of minutes per se, but
situationally.
Why is he on the power play?
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, he shouldn't be. Let's just cut it.
And I'm not saying that like he's a poor offensive player to an extent. It's just you could be doing like I used to have this argument about Claude Giroux when it came to penalty kill. You're wasting good minutes on him on the penalty kill and burning his energy so that later in the game he's not as fresh when you need him.
Right.
You need Ivan Provorov to be at the best he can be when it's penalty kill time and when it's 5-on-5 time. Simple as that.
Ivan Provorov.
And you've got 2 power play specialists on the roster.
And that's the thing, is Ivan Provorov is a valuable asset on the power play. Like if the Flyers didn't have Shane Gostisbehere and Eric Gustafson, and Ivan Provorov was just your best defenseman, and like you wanted to put him on power play 1 and Sanheim on power play 2, kind of like you were running for a little bit of last year, I understand that. But now that you have Shane Gostisbehere, I don't want to say he's completely rehabilitated, but Shane Gostisbehere has done a lot for his image this year. Shane Gostisbehere no longer looks like much of an overpayment at $4.5 million. Thank God that contract looks okay again.
From an offensive standpoint, yes, you're right.
Right. And one of the things we've talked about on this show is that Shane Gostisbehere makes his money offensively and on the power play. Why isn't he your power play 1? Ivan Provorov doesn't need to be on the power play right now because you just have better options, right? You have plenty of talented forwards. You only need to run 1 defenseman on each unit. You don't need more than Ghost and Gustafson. And if you do, I would go Sanheim before Provorov at this point, just to give him the time. Because I think Travis Sanheim could and will in the future be a very good power play defenseman. But I think he needs to get some time with it. And I think if you're going to go to a 3rd defenseman on the power play, I think it should be him over Provorov. Provorov should be 4th on the list.
I mean, they mismanaged a lot of that power play from personnel anyway. I mean,
I'm sorry, are you saying that the Flyers special teams aren't being managed well? Is that a surprising news story in 2021?
No, it's not a surprising news story, but I'm surprised it's gone on as long as it has. I mean, let's just here's what your top unit should be. Sean Couturier is your best player, period, on the team. He's got to be on the top power play.
He's got to be there.
James Van Riemsdyk is having a great year, and he's doing a lot of it at net front. He's got to be net front. Yep. You need Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek back on the same unit, and you need Shane Gostisbehere back at the top. Done. That's your top 5.
Honestly, I might substitute Jake Voracek for Joel Farabee specifically this season with the season Joel Farabee is having. But other than that, we are very similar, and I agree with Jake Voracek as a solid option there too.
The only reason I put Voracek out there is familiarity. Because
okay, that's valid.
Because let's just I don't see anything when they're not out on the power play together that brings that. And I'm not saying it always works. Look, believe me, if there's anything I'm tired of, it's a team forcing passes like they do so often.
Right.
But you do take the cross-ice pass away because you're throwing Giroux in different places. At one point in time, they had Giroux on the wrong, like on his off wing.
Giroux on the right wall was the most infuriating thing I've ever seen.
But they have him over there, and they put Sean Couturier over on the left side, which again is
his strong side too. Like they're both. Neither one of them is on for the one timer at that point. It was
correct.
awful.
And then you're throwing Konechny in the middle somewhere or at net front or whatever, and it's like. It just doesn't work.
Claude Giroux is not Alexander Ovechkin or Steven Stamkos or Vladimir Tarasenko.
Look at the 6-on-5.
But he certainly deserves to be in that spot. He deserves to be at the top of the left circle hitting clappers.
Right. If he takes them.
When they're and I think he's gotten better at pulling the trigger on them when they're open. I don't know if he has the confidence in his shot to pull the trigger maybe quite as often as he should. But if the shot's there, Claude generally tends to take it.
He won't do it unless he has a wide open net like he did last night.
I guess.
No, and that's half the problem.
I'd like to see him have a little more confidence in his shot because Claude Giroux has a hell of a shot. There's a lot wrong with this team. I agree that I don't know if Matthias Ekholm fixes it. But I really think he does so much. I mean, that would solve a lot of your problems.
I'm going to pop up this little graphic you got here because I feel like we do need because I feel like we need to address it because I didn't like we mentioned it. Ekholm would be nice, but there's another piece to this that could be interesting.
Well, right? Do you want to mention the specific rumor?
Sure. Now. The person who had it first is Anthony Sanfilippo from Crossing Broad, who has a lot of insight. Shout
out to Anthony. He's a good asset to follow if you're into the Philadelphia Flyers for sure.
And props to him because he beat COVID earlier this year and it was not pretty. Like
good for him.
He was in the hospital for a while.
I didn't know that. Good for him. A lot of
time. Like he missed like 2 or 3 weeks of the season. Like he was.
I'm glad you're doing well.
He went from being at training camp, which was all of a week, to. All of a sudden, it was like the first 2 games of the season, and he's in the hospital right now. And
wow,
it's not looking like for a while. It was like it was not looking good, and then
we're all certainly glad he's feeling better for sure.
He's been back to games all the time. He's good. Looking great, doing great. So it's awesome. But the deal apparently, or part of the conversation, was a Matthias Ekholm and coming to Philly, which is look. That's part of it that I sit there and I go, makes all the sense in the world.
It's been a rumor for a while now, basically all
season.
season.
The type of player they're looking for makes all the sense in the world.
Yep.
Now let's get to the parts that don't make as much sense.
There's some spiciness going on here.
And again, this is not to discredit what somebody's saying as a report. This is just, I'm sitting there going, why would Nashville listen to this?
It sounds unbelievable.
It kind of does. Yeah.
Right.
Like, honestly,
we're not saying it is, but it sounds a little too good to be true, honestly.
The reason I'm saying it sounds unbelievable or that I sit there and I say this is where it's really surprising or it doesn't make a lot of sense is because if Chuck Fletcher's out there trying to make a deal and this is the offer that's on the table, I don't know why you haven't pulled the trigger yet.
Right.
Unless it has to do with the inclusion of one player in the deal that we've talked about already.
Well, and the offer is...
Okay, so Ekholm was part of it, and that's fine. So so you start with that because you go, what would the Flyers have to give up to get Matthias Ekholm? And, to no one's surprise, draft picks are involved in this.
Sure.
And it's not small draft picks by any stretch. They're talking like a first and a third.
I would imagine they're hardy draft picks for sure.
Okay, that's fair. You really need, let's put it this way. That's what the draft picks are there for at this stage of where you are.
We've talked about that a lot this year, yeah.
But you've played around with, and this is remember that this is also in the offseason what helped you get better to an extent. Like a year ago when it was Matt Niskanen, look what he did. Justin Braun came in. Look at how much better the defense played as a whole. Even though Braun left some stuff to be desired, look how much better they were at shot suppression, goals allowed, all that stuff. Like everything changed in that direction.
And Chuck Fletcher has on multiple occasions praised the cabinet that Ron Hextall left behind.
Sure, but they did it a lot without having to give up a player.
Right.
They weren't giving up prospects to get those guys. They traded a bunch of draft picks.
Well, sure, and
in one case, because it was in Niskanen's case, it was here's Radko Gudas. So you upgraded at defense.
Well, that's what a full cabinet does. Is it allows you to spend a couple of years spending draft picks as capital while your full cabinet matures and grows into their role. So the fact that Hextall has left, the fairly full cabinet here, all of a sudden Chuck Fletcher has the flexibility to go out and get a Matt Niskanen, go out and get a Radko Gudas, go out and trade a pick to pick up Kevin Hayes, right?
Right. But,
something small like that.
But that's the significance of what they did is it's a 5th rounder to get the rights to Kevin Hayes and then sign him. It's a 2nd and 3rd rounder to get Justin Braun, and even that might have been a little steep.
It was definitely a little steep, for the record.
But it's also Radko Gudas. Was there anything else in the deal? Was there a pick in that deal?
I think there might have been. There was some salary retention, and I think the Flyers might have given up a pick
side,
too.
Right?
Yeah. Then the Capitals gave up a pick. I think either way.
I don't remember there being a pick coming back to the Flyers. Is the point I'm making?
Maybe you're right.
It might have been. So it might have been Gudas with salary retained by the Flyers for Niskanen.
Maybe you're right.
Is what it was. So, but the point is that you made all those deals and didn't give up a prospect, so you kept the full cover. All you did was deplete
You're just
some of
doling out
the
a little bit of draft capital.
Deplete some of the draft picks you had for the future, but you've already picked so many times. That's what you were there for. That's what moving that next step was all about. You've made it to that point where you can trade a couple of draft picks to get a player who you think helps you. And
Chuck Fletcher's now spending his future draft capital, and it's the perfect time to be doing so.
So I'm not afraid about a pick, or two. I don't care. That's what they're there for. Like
even a first-round pick,
but you
maybe not this year.
Right, but you've also spent. Well, there's a lot of belief that moving a first-round pick this year is not going to be as easy. Like teams want the first-round pick for the following year,
because this year's draft is a little bit weaker.
Not playing, so it's not giving the guys who are not drafted yet a good chance to get exposure.
Yeah, and I have a feeling I've been doing a little bit of early research for some deep fantasy leagues I'm in, and the 2022 draft looks very, very good.
Okay, I mean,
so just that those picks will be highly sought after, but at the same time, the Flyers are entering that stage where you're expecting to be picking in the mid to late 20s or early 30s. Like that's why you can afford to trade your first round pick, because you're expecting it to not be a lottery selection like ever in any universe.
Well, and not only that, but it's not just that you don't expect it to be in the lottery, but it's also that's why it's easier to part ways with those picks. That's why teams do, because when you're picking 27th or whatever, you go, I'll get rid of that pick. And teams get used to doing this. The Flyers would go out and grab a second first-round pick when they could over those years, because it was, here's another chance to get another player who might help for the future. You can look at it however you want to. Joel Farabee was not the Flyers' pick.
Right.
He wasn't.
No.
And
they went out and got it and got their guy, and they got him.
And they made it work. And
now you have a player who looks very, very good. Joel Farabee looks very, very good.
Joel Farabee looks very, very good. But here's the problem. You can also luck into something with your good pick, like with your own pick, and it turns out to just not work out. Like that's the way people are starting to feel about Nolan Patrick. He's a 2nd overall pick that was your own pick. You kind of lucked into the situation, and he's not the player you thought he was going to be. Yep. Joel Farabee, or he's getting more ice time, having more success, and doing more for the team than Nolan Patrick is, and that's just fact. It's not like I'm sitting here picking on the guy. That's just fact.
Joel Farabee is contributing significantly more than Nolan Patrick is at this point, and there's really no question about it.
So, all right, so let's go back to the deal for a minute, or the potential deal. So draft picks are no surprise. Now you got to get into the players who are going to go, and it shouldn't really be a surprise that at least one of these names is being discussed, because it's probably the most expendable players you have at this point. It's hard to believe saying the defensemen are some of the most expendable you have, but it's the truth. It's so Shane Gostisbehere and Eric Gustafsson's name are coming up.
And neither of those names individually is really much of a surprise, right? We've talked about Gustafsson on a short contract, kind of a movable deal, a guy who's at the bottom of the lineup when he's in the lineup, power play specialist. Shane Gostisbehere obviously has been the subject of trade talk for, it seems like going on 2 years now. So neither of these guys individually is all that surprising, but I think the combination is a little like, no, really, would you trade both of them? Okay. But if you're getting Ekholm back, I think you do that. What was the rest of it?
A surprising addition to the group, or to the rumor. Victor Arvidsson.
Yeah, on the Nashville side of things, it got very, very spicy when you talk about Ekholm and Arvidsson potentially coming to Philly in exchange for Gustafsson, and
2 draft picks.
Draft picks.
Or whatever. It doesn't really make a difference.
If it's a first, if that's the deal, and if it is a first and a third, done. Right. Chuck Fletcher, why have you not done this deal?
Well, because here's the other thing. First of all, at this given point in time, you've got to throw the expansion draft out the window.
If you're making that kind of deal, yeah, absolutely.
Well, no, not even for that. Because let's put it this way. You got 2 options right now. If you choose to do nothing and try to see how it works itself out, you might come out of this. There's no reason to say you can't.
Sure.
But
there's also a real possibility you end up as a medium team that goes out in the first round again.
So, but see, my point to that is that then if Seattle's watching this year and going back and, like, at some point in time, you can't reference, they had a run from January to March and they looked really good, and then they made the playoffs and they won their first 3 games back from being in the playoffs, and then they won a playoff series, and then,
right?
Like, you know what I mean? Like, at some point in time, it becomes the part of the season that you go, well, that was just a really good run, but this is who they are, right?
Right.
And if that's what it is, then who's Seattle taking that's such a loss? Honestly.
So a name that I'm concerned about the Flyers losing, and I've been worried about this for a while now, is Scott Laughton.
Laughton you might protect.
I'm concerned just because you have to protect who? Voracek, Giroux.
You
don't have to protect Voracek. I'm sorry.
Right.
Jake Voracek's contract protects Jake Voracek. You protect Claude Giroux. You protect Kevin Hayes.
Yeah, Giroux and Hayes have no move clauses.
Have no moves.
You have to protect them. You're protecting Sean Couturier. You're protecting you're
protecting Travis Konechny.
Yeah.
You're protecting Oscar Lindblom.
More than likely. I mean,
you're protecting Oscar Lindblom.
No. Listen, what I'm trying to get at is that I don't know if another team is going to sit there and then say, I need to have that guy. I'm not saying Oscar Lindblom's a great story, and a lot of people know who he is around the league now because of it. As bad of a circumstance as it is for knowing him, he's not the player he was a year ago yet. And that's not to say he won't get back there. It's just I don't know if that makes him a threat for expansion, though, as much. Other than that he's got 2 years on his contract left at $3 million. That's about the only thing I've got.
Who's running things in Seattle? Is it Ron Francis?
Yes.
I think Chuck Fletcher, I'm sure, has already had a conversation with Ron Francis. I've been a proponent of the Flyers being in a position where they're trading an asset to Seattle in exchange for having some influence on who Seattle picks.
Now, the Laughton discussion, by the way, is interesting for what it's worth, because Laughton's a free agent at the end of the year.
Oh, right. Okay. So you don't have to protect them.
You don't have to protect him to retain him, because
you
even
can float
if
him over the Seattle
him,
period. Yeah.
No, but even if Seattle takes him, he can then say, I'm not signing, go back into free agency and return.
And sign with the Flyers, right. At that point, he can just only sign 7 and can't sign 8. That's the only thing he loses. But even then, the Flyers weren't signing him.
I don't know why anybody in the current atmosphere of the league in general would want to sign for anything too long term.
No, I agree. I'm just saying he would technically lose that ability.
In a weird way, at the end of the day, does it make a lot of sense now to look back at some of the deals and go, this is why Phil Myers got the 3-year bridge deal. This is why Oscar Lindblom got the 3-year bridge deal.
That's exactly why.
Because you didn't know. It needed to be proven beyond 1 year.
Yep, and we knew that the cap was going to stay pretty flat, and it's, okay, here, play under this contract while the cap is flat, and then when the cap opens back up, we'll see if we can pay you. We'll see if you earned it.
Right. And I know people are going to sit there and point, there's a lot of pointing out that, Justin Braun was was the response to Niskanen retiring, and Robert Haig's contract was the response to Niskanen retire.
I think they were going to re-sign Haig, maybe a little bit Braun, but I think they were going to re-sign Haig.
I think Braun was gone until Niskanen retired.
Oh, right, that's what I'm saying. I agree
and then in
well, we need somebody.
Well, that was more of your knee-jerk reaction to that news and getting somebody in. Realistically, the one that kind of bugs me the most is Gustafsson, because at the end of the day, you didn't have to sign him.
Right. At all.
Here's my problem with it. They've got Provorov, Gostisbehere, Sanheim, Myers, Braun, Haig. That's 6. Okay, and even if one of them's not able to go, or somebody's not playing the way that you want them to, and the season's going exactly the way it is right now,
right? And if you do flashback, we were talking about expanded rosters
last night as a coaching staff. You literally chose last night to dress Nate Prosser over Eric Gustafson and Robert Haig. Yep. What does that say?
It doesn't say good things.
Right. But then my point is that if you're going to dress Nate Prosser over Eric Gustafson specifically, forget Haig for a moment. If you're going to dress Prosser over Gustafson, why did you even sign him?
Right.
Then what's the point of him being here, other than that he can help the power play, which he hasn't done as much of this year anyway? Then why is he even here? Why did you literally write a check for $3 million this year and say, here you go, we're just throwing the money away?
And you've mentioned a bunch of defensemen, and you haven't even mentioned a guy like Mark Friedman, who is a viable option for this roster and hasn't really seen a whole lot of playing time this year.
Prosser over two other guys. When
even a guy like Mark Friedman, right? Yep. Nate Prosser, I'm not. There's nothing there.
And I'm not sitting here trying to say, by the way, because
there's nothing there for me.
When Friedman got claimed off waivers, it's not the biggest loss. I'm not saying he's an automatic replacement, but the point is, you had him here at the beginning of the season. He was your 7th.
Yep.
Then Nate Prosser's your 8. Right. So you're telling me that you didn't trust in Mark Friedman enough as a 7 to not go out and get somebody else who you essentially signed for $3 million to be your 7.
That's right, but you're playing Nate Prosser over guys that you went out and signed in free agency last year.
I'm kind of getting tired of there's $7 million tied up in a third pairing.
Right,
That's ridiculous.
Or in the press box because they're not good enough to get on the ice.
Right, I get how Ivan Provorov is worth $6.5 million, $6.75 million. I get how Sanheim and Myers are going to make over $2-3 million. I get how that has to play out at a certain point. But you're telling me you couldn't have saved the $3 million on Eric Gustafson and gotten somebody else who fills a bigger need for that defensive core than a guy who can play on the power play? That's the joke of it. That's missing the mark so badly in my opinion.
And then the joke's on you because you hired, you signed this guy to be your power play specialist, and then your old power play specialist figured it out.
To an extent.
To an extent, right. I'm not willing to call Shane Gostisbehere completely, 100% whatever, but I'd say he's most of the way back to kind of living up to the hype, as it were.
But the problem that people are going to have with the whole thing is, when you go up and down the lineup, Claude Giroux, Jake Voracek, Kevin Hayes, James Van Riemsdyk, Travis Konechny, Sean Couturier, Oscar Lindblom, Scott Laughton, Joel Farabee, Nolan Patrick, you start to list those names off, you're going, how is this a team that looks like this?
I know. Well, let's circle all the way back around to where this conversation started, and that's the Nashville trade rumors. Does this team look better if you add Victor Arvidsson and Matthias Ekholm to it?
I would love to see what Victor Arvidsson would do in this city.
I would love to see what Victor Arvidsson would do in any city but Nashville. He is so stale there. He needs a change of pace so bad.
Well, I think you can say that for a lot of their guys.
Yep,
honestly,
and he's wherever he goes, he's gonna look good because he's a 40-goal scorer he's a dyed-in-the-wool 40-goal scorer, and there are not many of those. Yeah, he's gonna be dangerous when he gets somewhere he's happy to be playing.
Nashville was a really, 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 really bad team last year and so far this year, right?
Yep.
Obviously.
Yeah.
In a really, really bad year that didn't get completed, which we've talked about a number of times when it comes to the 2019-20 season.
Of course.
He still had 15 goals.
Yep. Probably about.
Now this year in 28, he's got 3 goals and 13 points, which kind of just shows where that team is now.
It's bad. Nobody's scoring there.
No. Well, now look, they're defensively, and this is part of the problem with the Ekholm stuff. They're missing 4 regulars defensively right now. They do not have Roman Josi. He's out with an injury. They do not have Ryan Ellis. He's out with an injury. Dante Fabro got suspended.
Yep.
For a little while, so he wasn't playing. They're down to the bare minimum when it comes to their defensive group, and now they're talking about moving a guy like that. Now, my thought
I think they're going to.
Well, because my thought behind that is if they don't, that window went from opening, hey, look, they can make a Stanley Cup final, look how good they could be, all that type of stuff. They made the final in, 17, right?
Yeah, and I still think they got robbed in that because of the early whistle against the Penguins in, I think, Game 6, where they missed a huge, man, that whole series would have been different if that puck goes in.
Well, there would have been a Game 7, but quite frankly, they were having the same problem that for a lot of people like the Flyers were having over the years, which is over last year, which is when they would go on the road and play in Pittsburgh, which obviously was a different animal in that year because of
Stanley
fans.
Cup final. Yeah.
Well, no, because of fans.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think they would have won that Game 7. I do think they deserved a better fate in the Game 6, but I don't think they would have won that Game 7.
Anything can happen in a Game 7.
That's true. Now, the reason I point out like what year it was is, like I said, that was the 17 Stanley Cup final, right? So that was the first year that Arvidsson kind of broke out. 80 games, 31 goals, 61 points. It's like, oh, all of a sudden he went from the best season he had was a 56-game season with 8 goals and 8 assists to 30 goal scorer.
Yep.
And it was very impressive, and he was a catalyst to that team in the playoffs and how they got to where they were in that year. And then the next year, he did not play in as many games. He missed 4 games instead of 2 and came up 1 goal short of a 30-goal season, which you could very easily contribute to missing 4 games.
Right.
When you needed 1 goal. And then the following year, he played in only 58 games and had 34 goals, which was a career high.
Yeah, he's insane. Like, one of these days, Victor Arvidsson's going to score 40 goals. You get him, you're going to get a 40 out of him at some point. If you have him for a couple of years and play him on your top power play unit, play him on your top line. It's all you need. It's all you need.
Well, and here's the thing. Like, I get kind of not curious about it, but I assume, like you're right. It's probably just so stale there that it's drying up all of the offense. Because if I go and I look at who he's playing with right now, it's a joke that he has 3 goals this year, right?
I'm not a fancy underlying number, blah, blah, blah. I can tell you for almost a fact that Victor Arvidsson's going to go explode somewhere.
Well, because here's the thing. He's on a line right now with Philip Forsberg and Ryan Johansson, and yet they're not producing at all. If I go and, like, I believe I can check their last, 5 or something like that. Here, hold on. Oh, let's do this one. Here's the whole year. Philip Forsberg's having a good year. He's got 10 goals and 17 assists, so that's 27 points in 28 games. He's the point per game player.
Oh, right.
But down the middle, you go, Ryan Johansson has 2 goals and 6 assists. Now, don't get me wrong. I think he's missed some time. He was on the COVID list for a while.
He's also not exactly the youngest.
But he's played in 20 games, so 8 points in 20 games for your top line center isn't very good.
And then Matt Duchene hasn't been very good.
I don't know what Matt Duchene's just and he's out of the lineup right now. So that's
is he really?
Yeah, he's out too.
Okay.
Right now they're missing. Duchene's out, Ellis is out, Luke Cunning's out, Saros is out, so their top goalie's out, Yossi's out, Borshevsky's out. There's another defenseman. So sorry, I missed that. That's the guy I missed. So that's the 4.
I wonder if Minnesota regrets trading away Luke Cunning now that they're actually a decent team.
No, I don't think so, because Luke Cunning's got 5 points this season.
Well, again, in Nashville, it's kind of a rotten apple. Well, either way, in Nashville, it certainly seems like Nashville is going to trade Ekholm. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded Arvidsson. I don't know if they're going to be in the same deal. I don't know if they're going to come to the Flyers. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded Arvidsson because I don't know if you heard. They came out and talked about their 3 untouchables. I think it was Forsberg, Yossi, and Rene. So things are going great in Nashville.
I would say if that's their untouchables, and there's something wrong with that picture. And it's
it turns out that having one GM for 20 years can lead to some problems.
Well, no, I hear you. Okay, so hold on. Here's the thing. So Forsberg is definitely an untouchable for them.
Totally, that one's fair.
Because you build around him, I get it.
He's your stud.
Yossi, when he plays, is still very good.
He was a Norris contender last year.
Right, and he's been out of the lineup this year, so it's not like some of the stuff is his fault specifically.
No, for sure. And in fact, him being gone is part of the reason they've been so poor.
Right, and if you want to say you're going to try to build around Saros because it's finally his turn, and Rene's going to be untouchable to be the backup,
right?
Because you want the veteran presence, and he still can win you a few games. Sure, you can go with that, but I think I'm talking about a window that, like, you sit there and you go, the Stanley Cup window was wide open in 2017 when they were making a run, and it's like, look at all these guys they have that are just coming up. Look at Look at Arvidsson.
They're such a good
Forsberg,
team, right?
And Johansson. I don't even know if Johansson was even on the team yet.
He got there that year, I think.
Okay. But like Duchesne
he was part of the
wasn't
thing that pushed them over the top.
But Duchesne wasn't a part of it, and there's other guys that factor in.
No, but they still had PK Subban there.
They had James Neal. They
had James Neal when James Neal was still okay.
Really producing. Yep.
Pekka Rinne had a good year because that's the thing with Pekka Rinne. He's hit or miss like some top tier goalies, right? Sergei Bobrovsky's the same way. He has good years. He had bad years. Devin Dubnyk was the same way for a couple of years. You caught a good Pekka Rinne year. Yep. And you got hot.
Sure, but that's part of where you like it goes that direction, and it's not like I look at Philip Forsberg and I say that's a superstar quality player. That's a guy who changes a game when he's on the ice late in a game and can make a difference. He did it earlier this year. He had a game earlier this year where he literally by himself made a play to win a game in overtime, and you go, that's the difference maker. That's a guy who takes a matter into his own hands and wins a game.
Right,
and things like that. So. That's one part of it, but they're getting to the point where they know that, and I'll try to because I still have it open. Let me just go to their cap friendly for a moment, because if I'm not mistaken, and I just want to make sure I'm semi right on this. So so Philip Forsberg's contract is up after next year. Arvidsson's is not.
Is Forsberg an RFA at the end of that deal, or is he a UFA
after that?
Ooh, I wonder if they're getting nervous about that one.
Exactly. I mean, and here's the thing. It's not hard to get nervous about him when you look at the rest of the guys whose contracts are up in this year or next.
They're freeing up a lot of money?
Well, you got $3.75 million to Mikael Granlund, who probably, I don't know if he's going to stay or go. It just doesn't seem like he's a fit. They've tried this from last year's deadline. In 2 years... let me stick to this year. Eric Hall is up after this year. That's only $1.75 million, though, so it's not a ton, but it's there. And then they've got guys like Eli Tolvanen and things like that who are RFAs, but that's a different story. And again,
by the way, I think Mikael Granlund will be a great center for the Montreal Canadiens next year.
Ooh,
he'd be a great fit on that team.
That's spicy. I like that.
I think he'd be a great fit on that team.
Now, by the way, the one deal you're going to have to make down the line also with and this is an RFA, but it's a deal you're going to have to make. Fabro's contract is up at the end of this year. And that's his ELC, so he's going to make money.
Well,
he's going to make money. He's a right-handed defenseman
who got himself suspended this year.
Okay, yes, he did, but I'm saying he's also
hurting your value.
Oh, whatever.
Although they are going to get into Detroit territory pretty quick, where they're not going to be able to sign anybody. It's going to be tough for Nashville for a little bit here.
All right. So let's have fun for a moment, because by the way, both goalies are up this year.
Oh dear.
Saros and Rinne are up after this year.
Is Saros?
Saros is an RFA.
Okay. Whew. Man, because they would have
Saros is not only an RFA, but he's arbitration eligible, which helps.
The problem with Nashville has ruined Juuse Saros, because he should have gotten the reins 3 years ago. Basically, Pekka Rinne should have started that. Pekka Rinne had that run in 2017. When he came out and was garbage the next year, they should have used that year to transition to Saros. And they didn't. And now the kid missed his development window, and he's a 26-year-old backup or 24-year-old backup, however old he is.
Well, I was about to get there. It's not. I don't think it's that he's missed his window, quite honestly.
I don't know.
No, I'll tell you why. He's been. It's because he's been in the league so long as a regular backup. You know what I mean? Like,
right. He came up young.
He's been doing this since 16, 17. He made 21 appearances that year.
Is he 26?
He's 25.
25. Okay.
But my point in saying that is that Jordan Binnington was an AHL goaltender until he was 26.
Right. Does he have 100 games yet? If you just kind of
132 games played, 116 starts.
Okay, so he's got a decent little bit of experience. If he was a starting goalie, you're looking at 2.5.
He's got 60 wins.
Right. And well, I mean, there was a very good Nashville Predators team for the first half of his tenure there. Not so much this year and last year, but
no. Well, this year this year, if you're not sure if it's a problem or not, just look at how his numbers have changed, because his workload has increased just pretty much every year, right? He went from 21 games played in 16-17 as essentially a rookie, because he played in one game in 15-16. So 21 games, 19 starts. He won 10 games. Goals against was 2.35. Save percentage was .923. Outstanding numbers, right?
Yeah.
From that standard. The next year, 26 games, 23 starts, 11 wins, 245 goals against, 925 save percentage.
Okay,
Pretty
still
darn good from your backup.
Yeah.
And that was the year.
And
That was
again,
the year.
we're talking about right. That's the year we're talking about premium Nashville Predators, Stanley Cup run Nashville Predators.
Then you go again. The next year, 18-19, 31 games played, 27 starts, 17 wins, 262 goals against. So the goals against is up, but he's playing more.
Yeah, and the other
Save
thing
percentage is at 915.
The other thing I do want to mention is that Nashville was a good enough team that your UC Saros is really only starting, second half of back-to-backs against bad teams. He's getting
never broken the 40 game mark, is what you're trying to say. Except for,
he's
last year he played in 40 games, but 34 starts, and
not only that, but Nashville was good enough that they could cherry pick who they started their backup against a little bit.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. And
there is a little bit of a grain of salt here with these numbers.
Last season was the first one he had kind of more of a majority of the workload because, again, every team played, 50-something games roughly?
Yeah, I think Rene missed some time with an injury,
probably did,
too.
but what I'm saying is that 40 games, 34 games started, and 17 wins again, so he matched the win total.
From a team that was starting to go downhill.
Right. 270 goals against, 914 save percentage, almost the exact same numbers as a year ago.
Right.
As the year before when he was starting to get more starts. This year, you're at 13 games played, 12 starts, 5 wins, 310 goals against, and 895 save percentage. But he's consistently, for those previous 4 years when Nashville was still good and then trending in the wrong direction, going downward with all that, still giving you roughly a 260 goals against average and a 915 save percentage, which by most standards are league average.
Right, and especially when you're talking about a poor team.
So he's not. To me, he's not the problem.
I didn't say he was
in front of him. No, but I can see him working out as a long-term solution for them in goal.
Right. Now, I never said USA Saros was a problem or that he was totally ruined or blah blah blah. I think he could have been a really, really, really good goalie, and I think there's a chance that they missed the opportunity to kind of make that natural transition.
I guess. I know where you're coming from.
If you re-sign Pekka Rinne, and if he's one of your untouchables, you're certainly going to try to re-sign him, right?
Right.
I don't know how easy it is to sign Saros at that point, knowing that Pekka Rinne is there, just because Pekka Rinne is going to get a certain number of starts.
Yeah. I mean, let's just say, here's what Nashville's problem is, and here is why they're going to try to do it. And by the way, Arvidsson's talked about in this trade rumor, right?
Yeah.
Arvidsson's contract is $4.25 million, and I believe one of the things that was talked about in this is that Nashville would be retaining some salary, too.
How much longer is that?
That is a...
this year, next year?
That's 3 more years after this year.
And Nashville would retain for 4 years?
I've heard that that's part of it, possibly.
Okay, then at that point...
Why aren't you doing the deal?
Well... At that point, I think you're not doing the deal because they're asking for something else. And it's going to be something significant. It's going to be a Morgan Frost or 2 first-round picks or, if Nashville is retaining for 4 years, we don't see teams do that very often. If Nashville is going to retain over 4 years, especially when 2 of those years are still COVID, flat cap years,
well, the
you're going to pay a premium.
They're not going to retain for much. The rest of this year is going to be a wash by the time it would happen.
Sure.
So it's 3 years basically.
Sure, but still, that's a longer time than you see teams tend to want to hold dead salary on their books.
Well,
right?
For what it's worth, this is, like we said, this is a very preliminary discussion.
Are the Leafs still paying Kessel?
Oh, that's a good question.
I think this might be the last year that Phil Kessel's on the Leafs books, but either way, retention doesn't always work out very well.
No, Phil Kessel's on the books next year too.
Is he really?
$1.2 million next year as well. No,
there's 4 different teams paying that.
To shift back to Nashville really quick, because I feel like we've seen this before when it comes to getting stuck behind some really bad contracts, because that's their problem right now.
Yep.
You just want me to read off a couple of these bad ones?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because beyond this year, and we already know where they're headed or where it feels like they're headed, beyond this year, they still have Ryan Johansson, $8 million a year for the next 4 years beyond this year.
Yeah.
Philip Forsberg's making $6 million next year, but is
a
a
UFA after that, and is going to be more expensive after that.
Arvidsson is 4.25 for 3 years beyond this season.
Yep.
Colton Sissons, which is not, and believe me, this is about as good of a value as you're going to get because he's a guy who does contribute. 2.85 million.
They have some bad ones down here in the bottom, don't they?
Or 2.86 million. I'm sorry. For the next 5 years beyond this season. Then get into some of the other ones. Roman Josi, and Roman Josi is a valuable player, right?
Right.
We talked about this.
Did he just signed like a 7-year,
but Roman
8-year
Josi's
deal?
also 30 years old, and he's got 6 more years on his contract beyond this year.
So is it 6 more years or just
at $9.06 million?
Is it 6 more years or does cap friendly run out of space? Does it go further than that?
I mean, I'm checking for you.
Oh, okay, because it might go further than that.
I don't think it does though, because
okay. I could have sworn this was the first year of the extension.
No, because actually, I think they can actually chart. No, I think they can chart it that way if it does go beyond that year. Like they'll add
they
a
can?
year.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think he's one of the last ones. Matt Duchene, $8 million a year for the next 5 years beyond this year. Ryan Ellis.
Wait, 5 after this year?
Yes.
God, Duchene's a bad deal.
Ryan Ellis, $6.25 million for 6 years after this year.
How old is he right now?
Ellis is 30.
32? 30?
Hang on a minute. So they have.
That's okay. That's okay. That one's okay.
No, it's not because they have 3 30-year-olds locked up for the next 5 years after this, who are going to play until they're 35, and they're already not a good team.
I didn't say it was great, but like Ellis specifically, that's okay because I can see his style being okay until he's 36.
At least Johansson's deal at 4 more years beyond this, he's 28. All right, it takes you till when he's 32, 33.
Totally. That's acceptable.
I get it.
That's a deal you can move. That's a deal.
You just sign guys to these massive deals. Like, it's brutal.
In 2 years, when you're at the bottom of your tank and Ryan Johansson is leading your team with 43 points in 70 games, you can trade him at that point.
But all right, enough with the trade rumors, enough with that stuff because it's like,
you know what? Let's do a quick look ahead and then get out of here because we are looking at theoretically keeping the show a little bit shorter. I think that one's out the window now.
Coming there was a lot to talk about this week. I mean, it was a bad week, and trade rumors are being talked about, and guys are,
Well, that was a bad week. Hopefully, we have a good week coming up. The Flyers might add a defenseman during this trip if this Ekholm trade goes down. But basically, the Flyers are about to go to New York for a week, and they're going to play 2 games in the Garden and then 2 games against the Islanders. I don't know where the Islanders are actually playing their games this year, so I can't. Are they still splitting games? They can't be splitting games, are they?
What do you mean?
The Islanders? Are they still in 2 buildings? Are
Um,
they still playing games in Nassau and Barclays?
I don't know specifically, but
Okay.
they're
I was
working
just
on
curious.
they're working on building a new arena that's going to take over. And
I know. I just didn't know what they were doing
and
with.
supposedly that. By the way, that's an important update because the league did say that building will be ready to be used by next season.
Oh, cool.
So that's on track to be used when they planned to, which is good.
assuming nothing changes with the construction.
Sure, yeah.
Because it's New York. Hey, listen, it's New York construction and can grind to a halt at any minute. But either way, we got 4 games in New York. If the Flyers don't take 3 points from the Rangers in these 2 games, we have a serious problem.
It's really hard to talk about it this way because and here's why. The rest of this month is as big as it gets for this team, and if they do not find a way to get back into the playoff race the rest of this month,
right,
it's over. And when I say it's over, I'm not talking about just the season.
Right, because you're looking at a stretch of winnable games. Rangers are winnable.
You're looking at a stretch of games against teams that should be on your level, even at your worst.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying, is you should be able to beat the Rangers.
2 against the Rangers, the 3 against the Islanders are going to be brutal.
Yep.
Quite honestly.
Yep.
But the only thing you've got right now that's going for you is Anders Lee is out of the lineup for the foreseeable future on IR, probably missing the entire series.
We'll almost definitely miss the entire series if he's on the IR at this point.
Oh, they do it retroactively though.
That's
so
fair.
That's the only reason I'm saying it like that.
Right, but then looking forward, you got a game against the Devils, and then a couple more games against the Rangers, and then a couple more against Buffalo.
Right.
These are the teams you have to collect points against.
You can turn April, which, by the way, your reward for playing as well as you can in these next few games and turning it around if you think you're...
Boston Islanders, Boston.
Well, no. Just hear me out with this, like where I'm going with this. Because one of the things that I'm sure infuriated the hell out of people was the trending in the right direction comments after Saturday's game. Hey, they're trending in the right direction. That's not what the record says, but they're trending in the right direction. Well, if you're trending in the right direction, you should beat the Rangers and you should beat the Devils and you should beat the Sabres. And that's 6 of your next 9 games. 7 of your next 10. 7 of your next 10, right?
Something like that.
Yes. There's 10 games left in a month. That's 7 of them right there. And you have 3 against the Islanders. If you can find a way to come away with wins in most of those games, you might be able to look at the first Islander game on the 3rd of April, to start April, the back-to-back against Boston, another one with the Islanders, another with Boston before you get to Buffalo, that first week or so of April. You might be able to look at the game against the Islanders, the 2 games against the Islanders there, or the 3 against Boston, and go, you know what? It's a new season right now. And the playoffs are within reach, or you're back in the playoff picture slightly, and you have a chance to establish your place again.
Right, because at the end of this month, all right, we're talking about kind of laying out the rest of the month here. And if the Flyers can collect this many points through the end of March, once April hits, you're 6 weeks from the playoffs. And I know that we're still talking about being 9 weeks away at this point, or 8 weeks away at this point, whatever it is.
Right.
But again, we're talking about taking things in manageable segments. Right now, we're talking about the next 2 weeks.
Right now, you should be talking about the next 2 games.
Right.
1 game.
Right. I'm just talking about us speculating kind of on the team at a bigger scale. But then after that, it's a 6-week sprint to the playoffs. And you have not put yourself in a good enough position where you can coast down the stretch. You're going to have to earn every point you can to make it, because this division's going to be very good. I did want to mention an article I've mentioned a couple of times offline here. Dom Lucian wrote a fantastic article for The Athletic about how good the East is. And guys, I hate to tell you this, but a team that would, in a normal 82-game season, project for a 100-point season is going to miss the playoffs. And it might very well be the Flyers. The Flyers could miss the playoffs with what would, in a normal season, be 102 or 103. It's going to take a very, very, very good team to make the playoffs in the East. And right now, they haven't been playing like it, that's for sure. But they have time, right? Again, you play well over this 2 weeks, and you're right back in the conversation. But
it's a tall order. That's the problem.
It is a tall
order to say you just play better in the next 2 weeks, and it can turn it around. Right now, you've got to go out and win the next one. You've got to win against the Rangers
Monday night against the New York Rangers.
And quite honestly, if you lose one or both of those games, I don't know if this team is the same in the next 3 weeks.
Do you think this team trades, the UFAs, Justin Braun, Eric Gustafsson, whoever's not nailed down, basically?
I think at that point in time, I don't know if anything's off the table, quite honestly, except for like the obvious stuff, which is the no moves and things like that.
I'm not sure if we'll see any huge. You don't see a world where he trades Travis Konechny, do you? Like how big are we talking? Jake Voracek?
Maybe, but
okay.
But it's a stretch this year.
The money's tough.
But it's a stretch this year because no one's making deals. That's the hard part.
Well, and no one's got the cash to pay Jake Voracek.
Why I said what I really think is possibly going to happen is nothing.
And I think that's a very real possibility, and that is something that we will have to wait and see. Chuck Fletcher will make that decision as we move along. We're going to get out of here. We got 4 road games this week. It starts tomorrow night, Monday evening against the New York Rangers. We'll be back here next Sunday to talk about all those games. We got some preview videos. Kevin's doing preview videos over on the YouTube channel. I'll get back to doing the post-game videos eventually. I'm still working on my setup if you're watching on the YouTube channel. Speaking of the YouTube channel, follow us over there. You would think, search us will pop up at YWT Podcast. The Twitter is at YWT Podcast. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso. You can also find the show on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, SportsTalkPhilly.com. Everything. Kevin's little message board is empty today, so I don't know what the plugs are. I have to remember it off the top of my head.
They've been on your ticker the entire time watching this show.
You know what? That's just another advertisement to go watch on the YouTube channel at YWT Podcast. All right, guys. We'll be back next week. Hopefully we have some more fun hockey to talk about. We'll see you.